There is a city that starts as a cluster of mud huts on 7 hills above a river in central Italy. Nobody takes it seriously. The Greeks to the south consider its inhabitants semi-barbaric. The Etruscans to the north regard them as useful trading partners at best. The Carthaginians across the Mediterranean have never heard of them. Within 500 years, this city will rule everything from Scotland to Mesopotamia. It will be the largest empire the Western world has ever seen. Its language, its laws, its architecture, and its concept of government will shape every civilization that comes after it for the next 2,000 years. This is the story of how Rome began. And it starts, appropriately enough, with a murder. This is the rise of Rome. Rome's founding myth goes like this. Twin brothers named Romulus and Remus, descendants of the Trojan hero Aeneas, were abandoned as infants and suckled by a wolf on the banks of the Tiber River. They survived, grew up, and decided to found a city. They disagreed on which hill to build it on. Romulus killed Remus. Then he built the city and named it after himself. It is not subtle as founding myths go, but it tells you something important about how Romans saw themselves as people who got things done, even when it was messy, even when it cost something, even when the price was paid by someone they loved. The actual founding of Rome, if we can call it that, happened gradually, probably around the 8th century BCE, when Latin-speaking villages on the hills above the Tiber began merging into a larger settlement. The site was well chosen, far enough inland to be safe from coastal raids, close enough to the sea for trade, positioned at a natural crossing point on the Tiber that made it a hub for commerce moving up and down the Italian peninsula. Rome's earliest period was dominated by Etruscan kings. The Etruscans were the dominant civilization of northern and central Italy. Sophisticated, urban, skilled in metalworking and trade, and deeply influential on early Roman culture. Roman religion, architecture, and many political institutions show strong Etruscan influence. The Romans later denied this as much as possible, because nobody wants to admit their civilization was built partly on cultural borrowing from people they eventually conquered. The last Etruscan king of Rome was Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud. He ruled by fear, ignored the Senate, and made enemies at every turn. Around 509 BCE, after his son assaulted a noblewoman named Lucretia, who then killed herself rather than live with the dishonor, the Roman aristocracy rose up and drove the kings out of Rome. They replaced the monarchy with a republic. The Roman Republic was a system of government designed specifically to prevent any one man from accumulating the power of a king. 2 consuls, elected annually, shared executive power. Each could veto the other. The Senate, a body of senior aristocrats, provided continuity and advised the consuls. Various assemblies gave different classes of Roman citizens a voice in legislation and elections. It was not a democracy in the Athenian sense. Power was heavily weighted toward the patrician aristocracy. But it was a system with checks, balances, and the radical idea that no Roman citizen should be above the law. The Romans were obsessed with this idea. They called it Libertas, freedom. And what they meant by it was specifically freedom from the arbitrary power of a king. The word rex, king, became one of the most toxic words in the Latin language. For 500 years, no Roman politician who wanted to survive would allow himself to be called a king, even if he was effectively acting like one. The early republic spent most of its time fighting. Rome's neighbors, the Etruscans, the Samnites, the Latin tribes, the Greek cities of southern Italy, were not interested in Roman expansion. Rome fought them all, lost regularly at first, and kept coming back. What made Rome different was not that it won every battle. It didn't. What made Rome different was how it handled defeat. After a catastrophic defeat, and Rome had several, the Romans didn't collapse, sue for peace, or abandon their ambitions. They analyzed what went wrong, reformed their military, and tried again. They were, in the most literal sense, unkillable as a political organism. You could beat them 10 times and they would come back an 11th. Here is the thing about Rome that most people miss entirely. Rome didn't just conquer its neighbors. It did something no ancient power had done on the same scale before. It incorporated them. Conquered peoples were often given Latin rights or full Roman citizenship over time. Their elites could join the Roman Senate. Their cities became Roman municipalities with Roman law and Roman infrastructure. Being conquered by Rome eventually started to look less like defeat and more like an upgrade. This was Rome's secret weapon. Not just the legions, the offer of membership. By the mid-3rd century BCE, Rome controlled most of the Italian peninsula. It had developed the Manipular Legion, a flexible tactical formation far superior to the old phalanx, and had built a network of roads, colonies, and alliances that bound Italy together under Roman leadership. It had also developed a political culture of extraordinary toughness. Roman values, gravitas, pietas, virtus, fides, were not just words. They were a code that shaped how Romans thought about themselves, their duty to the state, and their relationship to the past. A Roman senator who had led armies in the morning would plow his own fields in the afternoon. The story of Cincinnatus, a Roman dictator who was called from his farm to save the state, did so in 15 days, then immediately resigned and went back to farming, was not just a legend. It was a template for what a Roman was supposed to be. Then Carthage noticed Rome, and everything was about to get significantly more complicated. By 264 BCE, Rome controlled Italy, and Carthage controlled the western Mediterranean. They had coexisted peacefully for generations, signing trade treaties and mutual non-aggression agreements. But when Rome moved into Sicily, the large island sitting between Italy and North Africa, it crossed into territory Carthage considered its own sphere. The First Punic War had begun, and Rome, which had almost no navy, was about to learn how to build one fast. But that is a story for the next episode. What matters now is what Rome had become in 500 years, from a village of mud huts to the master of Italy, with a political system sophisticated enough to survive centuries of internal conflict, a military flexible enough to adapt and improve after every defeat, and a cultural identity strong enough to absorb conquered peoples and turn them into Romans. The city that nobody took seriously was about to introduce itself to the rest of the Mediterranean world. Next time on Drawn from History, the Punic Wars, Rome versus Carthage. The greatest general of the ancient world marches an army of elephants across the Alps in winter. Rome loses 200,000 men and refuses to surrender, and a city is assaulted so thoroughly that nothing will ever grow there again. Until then, this has been Drawn from History. Thanks for watching.